The airport curb was a chaos of horns and hurried goodbyes, but I stood frozen, my heart a lead weight in my chest. At 25, I'd gambled everything, my savings, my family's approval, my small-town life in Nebraska, for a one-way ticket to San Francisco. Now, here I was, alone, with no one waiting for me and the crushing realization that I might have made the biggest mistake of my life. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I'd always known I was different. In my hometown of Kearney, where cornfields stretched wider than dreams, being gay was a secret you buried deep. My parents, devout and unyielding, called it a sin. My friends, the ones I thought I could trust, turned their backs when I came out at 19. So, I saved every penny from my job at the local diner, dreaming of a city where I could be myself. San Francisco was my beacon, my escape. But as I stood outside the airport gate, the weight of my choice hit me like a freight train. I had no job, no place to stay, and no one to call. Tears stung my eyes, and I didn't care who saw. That's when I noticed him. A man standing a few feet away, holding a cardboard sign. He was maybe 30, with warm brown eyes and a faded denim jacket. The sign read, "Newcomers welcome, safe rides home." I wiped my face, embarrassed, but his gaze met mine, steady and kind, like he'd seen 100 lost souls like me before. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low but clear over the din of the airport. I shook my head, unable to speak. He stepped closer, his name tag glinting. Lucas Rivera, volunteer, Haven House. "I'm Lucas," he said, offering a small smile. "If you need a place to go, I can help." I wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury I'd run out of back in Nebraska. Still, something in his eyes, steady, unguarded, made me nod. He gestured to a van parked nearby, its side painted with a rainbow and the words Haven House. A sanctuary for all. I hesitated, my backpack heavy on my shoulders, but the alternative was standing here, crying alone. So I followed him. The van smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Lucas drove, glancing at me occasionally in the rearview mirror. "First time in San Francisco?" he asked. I nodded, my throat tight. "It's a lot," he said, not pushing. "But it's a city that gives you a chance to start over." His words felt like a lifeline, though I wasn't sure I deserved one. I stared out the window as the city unfolded. Golden bridges, steep hills, and people who moved with a freedom I'd never known. Haven House was a narrow Victorian building tucked between a bodega and a laundromat in the Mission District. Inside, it was warm, cluttered with mismatched furniture and posters about community events. A woman with bright purple hair greeted us, introducing herself as Mara, the house manager. "Welcome, Ethan," she said, reading my name off the intake form Lucas handed her. "You're safe here." Safe. The word felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Lucas showed me to a small room with a twin bed and a window overlooking a mural of colorful birds. "It's not much," he said, "but it's yours for now." I set my backpack down, my hands trembling. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, his expression softening. "Because I was you once," he said. "Someone gave me a hand when I had nothing. I'm just paying it forward." That night, I lay awake, the city's hum seeping through the walls. I thought of my parents' disappointed faces, the church sermons that branded me a sinner, and the boy I'd loved in secret back in high school, who'd left without a goodbye. But I also thought of Lucas's sign, those bold letters promising a home. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope, a dangerous, fragile thing. The next morning, Mara sat me down with a cup of coffee and a stack of job listings. "You've got skills, Ethan," she said, scanning my hastily written resume. Diner work, customer service, that's a start. San Francisco's got opportunities, but you've got to hustle. I nodded, determined to prove I wasn't just a runaway with a pipe dream. Lucas joined us, offering to take me to a local cafe that was hiring. It's a start, he said, echoing Mara's words. And starts matter. The cafe, called Brood Awakening, was a cozy spot with exposed brick walls and a chalkboard menu. The owner, a gruff but kind man named Carl, gave me a trial shift on the spot. I fumbled with the espresso machine, my hands shaky from nerves, but Lucas stayed, sipping coffee at the counter and offering quiet encouragement. "You've got this," he said when I finally steamed milk without burning it. By the end of the day, Carl offered me a part-time gig. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Over the next week, Haven House became my anchor. I met others like me, people who'd left behind families, towns, or lives that didn't fit. There was Jay, a trans kid from Texas who dreamed of being a chef, and Aisha, a lesbian poet who'd fled her conservative family in Georgia. We shared stories over late-night pizza, our laughter a fragile rebellion against the past. Lucas was always there, organizing game nights or handing out bus passes, his quiet presence a steadying force. But I couldn't shake the fear that this was temporary. What if I failed? What if San Francisco chewed me up and spit me out? One evening, as I helped Lucas sort donations in the Haven House basement, I voiced my doubts. "I don't know if I belong here," I admitted, stacking cans of soup. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Lucas paused, his hands still on a box of clothes. "Strength isn't about never being scared," he said. "It's about showing up anyway. You're here, Ethan. That's strength enough for now." His words stuck with me, but so did his story. Over time, I pieced together bits of Lucas's past. He'd grown up in a small town too, somewhere in Arizona, where being openly gay had cost him his family. He'd found Haven House years ago, rebuilt his life, and now dedicated himself to helping others do the same. His resilience was quiet but fierce, and I found myself drawn to him, not just as a guide, but as someone who saw me when I felt invisible. One afternoon, as we walked back from the cafe, Lucas pointed out a mural on a nearby wall. Two men holding hands, painted in vibrant colors. "That's new," he said, smiling. "This city's changing, Ethan. It's not perfect, but it's fighting for people like us." I wanted to believe him, but the weight of my past still lingered. I wondered if I could ever be as sure of myself as he seemed to be. That night, I dreamed of Nebraska, of standing in the cornfields, screaming my truth to the endless sky. When I woke, my pillow was damp with tears, but for the first time, they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of possibility. I was starting to believe I could build a life here, one step at a time, with people like Lucas by my side. The days at Brood Awakening settled into a rhythm, each shift a small victory. I learned to tamp espresso grounds with precision, to banter with customers, to smile even when my feet ached. But the real challenge wasn't the work. It was the quiet moments when my mind wandered back to Kearney, to the family I'd left behind. My mother's voice echoed in my head, sharp and cold. "You're choosing a life of sin, Ethan." I pushed it down, focusing on the steam wand's hiss or the clink of coins in the tip jar. Lucas was a constant presence, stopping by the cafe most afternoons. He'd sit at the counter, sketching in a worn notebook or chatting with Carl about local politics. I caught myself watching him, the way his hands moved with quiet confidence, the way his laugh filled the room. He was handsome, sure, but it was his kindness that pulled me in. A kindness that felt like it could hold the weight of my fears without breaking. One evening, after a particularly busy shift, Lucas invited me to a community event at Haven House. "It's a poetry slam," he said, his eyes bright. "Aisha's performing. You should come. I hesitated. Crowd still made me nervous, but his enthusiasm was contagious. That night, Haven House was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Aisha took the stage, her voice fierce as she read poems about love, loss, and reclaiming her identity. The crowd roared, and I felt something shift inside me, a longing to belong to this vibrant, unapologetic world. After the slam, Lucas found me nursing a soda in the corner. "What did you think?" he asked, leaning close to be heard over the music. "It's alive," I said, struggling to find the right words. "Like everyone here is fighting for something." He nodded, his gaze steady. "That's what this place is, Ethan. A fight for who we are." His hand brushed mine as he passed me a flyer for the next event, and my heart stuttered. I pulled back, unsure if I'd imagined the spark. The next week, Carl gave me more shifts, and I started saving for an apartment. Mara helped me navigate the city's housing websites, but San Francisco's prices were brutal. "You'll get there," she assured me. "It takes time." I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. What if I was just playing at this new life, destined to fail? Lucas seemed to sense my unease. One afternoon, as we sorted flyers for a Haven House fundraiser, he asked, "What's got you so quiet?" I shrugged, avoiding his eyes. "Just wondering if I'm cut out for this city." He set down a stack of papers and turned to face me. "You're doing better than you think," he said. "You showed up, Ethan. That's half the battle." His words were simple, but they carried weight. I wanted to ask him how he'd done it, how he'd rebuilt after losing everything, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I mumbled a thanks and changed the subject. The fundraiser was a street fair in the Castro, San Francisco's heart of queer culture. Rainbow flags lined the streets, and music pulsed from every corner. I helped Lucas set up a Haven House booth, handing out stickers and chatting with passersby. For the first time, I felt part of something bigger, a community that didn't just tolerate me but celebrated me. A drag queen in a glittering gown high-fived me, and a group of teens asked for my advice on coming out. Me, Ethan Caldwell, the kid who'd hidden his truth for years, giving advice, felt surreal. But the high didn't last. That night, I got a text from my sister, Claire, the only family member who'd kept in touch after I left. "Mom's sick," she wrote. "She's asking for you." My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to my mother in 6 years, not since she told me I was no longer her son. The thought of going back to Nebraska, of facing her judgment, made my chest tight. I showed Lucas the text, my hands shaking. "What do I do?" I asked. He read the message, his brow furrowing. "That's heavy," he said, "but you don't have to decide tonight. Whatever you choose, you're not alone." His hand rested on my shoulder, warm and steady, and for a moment, I let myself lean into it. But fear crept in, fear of what going back might mean, fear of what staying might cost. I pulled away, muttering that I needed air. Outside, the city sparkled, indifferent to my turmoil. I walked aimlessly, the weight of Claire's text pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to run back to Nebraska, to beg for forgiveness, to fit into the mold I'd broken. But another part, the part that had cried outside the airport gate and found a home at Haven House, wanted to stay to fight for the life I was building. I didn't know which part was stronger. When I returned to Haven House, Lucas was waiting on the front steps, his denim jacket draped over his knees. "Thought you might need company," he said, offering a small smile. I sat beside him, the night air cool against my skin. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "Going back feels like giving up, but staying feels like abandoning her." Lucas listened, his silence a gift. Finally, he said, "You can love someone and still choose yourself, Ethan. It's not betrayal. It's survival." His words cut through my fog, sharp and true. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who'd held a sign for a stranger, who'd built a life from ashes. I wanted to be that brave, that sure. And for the first time, I wondered if I could love someone like him. Not just as a friend, but as something more. The thought terrified me, but it also felt like a door cracking open, letting in light I'd never dared to hope for. The next morning, I woke with a decision gnawing at me. I couldn't ignore my mother's illness, but I also couldn't abandon the life I was building. I called Claire, my voice shaky as I asked for details. "It's her heart," Claire said, her tone heavy. "She's stable, but she wants to see you, Ethan." I promised to think about it, but the call left me rattled. Haven House felt like a sanctuary, but Nebraska was a ghost I couldn't outrun. Lucas noticed my distraction during my shift at Brood Awakening. "You're somewhere else today," he said, sliding into his usual seat at the counter. I poured him a coffee, avoiding his gaze. "It's my mom," I admitted. "I might need to go back." His expression softened, but he didn't push. "If you go, you're not going back as the kid who left," he said. "You're stronger now. You've got people here who've got your back." His words were a lifeline, but the fear of facing my family still churned in my gut. That afternoon, Mara called a house meeting. Haven House was facing a budget shortfall, and the landlord was raising the rent. "We need to raise 10 grand by next month, or we're in trouble," she said, her voice steady but strained. The room buzzed with worry. Jay talked about organizing a bake sale. Aisha suggested another poetry slam. I felt helpless, my own problems dwarfed by the threat to the place that had saved me. Lucas stood up, his presence commanding. "We've been through worse," he said. "We'll figure it out together." His confidence was infectious, but I saw the worry in his eyes. After the meeting, I volunteered to help Lucas plan a fundraising gala. We spent hours in the Haven House common room, sketching out ideas, silent auctions, live music, local business sponsors. Working with him felt easy, like we'd been doing it for years. But every time his hand brushed mine or our eyes met for too long, my heart raced. I wasn't ready to name the feeling, not yet. I'd spent so long hiding who I was. The idea of wanting someone, really wanting them, felt like stepping off a cliff. A week later, I booked a flight to Nebraska. I'd stay for 3 days, see my mother, and come back. Lucas drove me to the airport, the same curb where I'd stood crying months ago. "You've got this," he said, his voice steady, "and we'll be here when you get back." I wanted to hug him, to tell him how much he meant to me, but fear held me back. Instead, I nodded and stepped out of the van, my heart pounding. Nebraska was exactly as I'd left it. Flat, endless, and suffocating. My childhood home smelled of antiseptic and regret. Claire met me at the door, her embrace fierce but brief. "She's in the living room," she said. My mother looked frail, her face lined with pain, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Ethan," she said, her voice thin. "You came." I nodded, unable to speak. The room felt like a courtroom, her judgment hanging in the air. We talked for hours, or rather, she talked and I listened. She spoke of her faith, her fears, her hope that I'd come back to God. I wanted to scream, to tell her I was still me, still her son, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I told her about San Francisco, not the city, but the people. I told her about Haven House, about Mara and Jay and Aisha. I told her about Lucas, though I didn't say his name. Her expression softened, just for a moment, and I saw a flicker of the mother who'd once read me bedtime stories. The visit was a blur of tension and unspoken words. My father barely looked at me, his silence louder than any sermon. Claire drove me back to the airport, her eyes red. "I'm proud of you," she whispered as we hugged goodbye. I boarded the plane with a mix of relief and grief, knowing I might never see my mother again. But I also knew I couldn't stay. Nebraska wasn't home anymore. Back in San Francisco, Lucas was waiting at the airport gate, holding the same cardboard sign. Newcomers welcome, safe rides home. I laughed through tears, the sight of him unraveling something tight in my chest. You didn't have to do this, I said as we climbed into the van. He shrugged, his smile warm. Wanted to make sure you came back. The drive to Haven House was quiet, but his presence was enough. For the first time, I felt like I was truly coming home. The gala planning consumed the next few weeks. Lucas and I worked late, our conversations drifting from logistics to dreams. He told me about his art, sketches he'd never shown anyone, and I admitted I'd always wanted to write stories, maybe about people like us. One night, as we sat on the Haven House roof, the city sprawling below, I found the courage to ask, "How do you do it, Lucas? How do you keep going after everything?" He looked at me, his eyes reflecting the city lights. "You find people who make it worth it," he said, "and you hold on." I wanted to kiss him then, to close the distance between us, but fear stopped me. Instead, I leaned against his shoulder, the warmth of him steadying my racing heart. He didn't pull away, and for that moment it was enough. The gala was a week away, and Haven House buzzed with nervous energy. Jay was baking cupcakes by the dozen, Aisha was rehearsing a new poem, and Mara was wrangling sponsors like a general preparing for battle. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction from my Nebraska trip. But my mother's words lingered, a quiet ache I couldn't shake. "Come back to God, Ethan." I didn't know if I could ever bridge the gap between us, but I was starting to realize I didn't need her approval to live my truth. Lucas and I were inseparable now, our late-night planning sessions blurring into something more. We'd talk for hours about art, about pain, about the futures we wanted. One night, as we sorted auction items in the basement, he showed me a sketch, a portrait of me, standing outside the airport gate, my face raw with emotion. "That's how I saw you that day," he said, his voice soft. "Scared, but brave." I stared at the drawing, my throat tight. No one had ever seen me like that. I wanted to tell him how much he meant to me, but the words stuck. Instead, I hugged him, brief but fierce, and he hugged me back. The gala was held at a community center in the Castro, decked out with fairy lights and rainbow banners. I wore a borrowed blazer, feeling out of place among the donors in their sleek suits. Lucas, in a crisp white shirt, moved through the crowd with ease, charming everyone. I watched him, my chest tight with a feeling I was finally ready to name. Love. Not the fleeting crushes of my teenage years, but something deeper, something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. Aisha's poem was the night's highlight, her words weaving a tapestry of struggle and triumph. The crowd gave her a standing ovation, and I saw tears in Mara's eyes. The auction raised thousands, enough to keep Haven House afloat for another year. As the night wound down, Lucas found me by the dessert table, his smile tired but bright. "We did it," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "You did it," I corrected, my voice thick. "You're the heart of this place." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "You're part of it now, Ethan. You're home." The word hit me hard, and before I could overthink it, I leaned in and kissed him. It was quick, clumsy, but his hand found mine, steadying me. When we pulled back, his smile was everything. "Took you long enough?" he teased, and I laughed, the sound raw and free. The next few days were a blur of joy and nerves. Lucas and I were tentative, learning each other in a new way. We'd steal moments between shifts, coffee runs, walks through the park, his hand brushing mine. But doubt crept in. What if I wasn't ready? What if I hurt him or he hurt me? I'd spent so long guarding my heart. The idea of letting someone in felt like handing over a loaded gun. One evening, as we sat in his tiny apartment above Haven House, I voiced my fears. I don't know how to do this, I admitted, staring at my hands. What if I mess it up? Lucas took my hand, his touch warm. We'll figure it out together, he said. Love's messy, Ethan, but it's worth it. His words were a promise, and for the first time I believed I could keep it. But life had other plans. A week later, Claire called again. My mother's condition had worsened. She was in the hospital, and the doctors weren't optimistic. She's asking for you, Claire said, her voice breaking. I felt the ground shift beneath me. I thought I could leave Nebraska behind, but it kept pulling me back. Lucas sat with me as I booked another flight, his hand on my knee. You don't have to go alone, he said. I can come with you. The offer stunned me, but I shook my head. I need to do this myself, I said, though the thought of facing my family without him terrified me. The flight to Nebraska was a storm of emotions. I replayed my last visit, my mother's words, my father's silence. I thought of Lucas, of the life we were starting to build. I didn't know if I was strong enough to face my past again, but I knew I couldn't run from it. As the plane descended, I clutched the sketch Lucas had given me, his portrait of me at the airport gate. It was a reminder of who I was becoming. Not the scared kid who'd left, but someone braver, someone worthy of love. Nebraska was colder this time, the air sharp with the promise of winter. Claire picked me up from the airport, her face drawn with worry. She's not doing well, she said as we drove to the hospital. But she keeps asking for you. I nodded, my throat tight. I didn't know what I'd say to my mother, or if I could find the words to bridge the years of silence. All I knew was that I had to try. The hospital room was sterile, the beep of machines a stark contrast to my mother's fragile form. She looked smaller than I remembered, her eyes clouded with pain but still piercing. Ethan, she whispered, reaching for my hand. I took it, her skin cool and thin. I'm here, Mom, I said, my voice breaking. For a moment we just sat there, the weight of our history heavy between us. She spoke slowly, her words halting. I was wrong, she said. I thought I was protecting you, but I pushed you away. Tears stung my eyes, and I squeezed her hand. I just wanted you to love me, I said, the truth spilling out. I'm still your son. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry. We talked for hours, unraveling years of pain. She told me about her fears, her faith, her struggle to understand me. I told her about San Francisco, about Haven House, about Lucas. I didn't hold back, and for the first time she listened. It wasn't a full reconciliation. Too much had happened for that. But it was a start. When I left the hospital, I felt lighter, like I'd laid down a burden I'd carried too long. My father was waiting in the hospital lobby, his face unreadable. You're leaving again, he said, not a question. I nodded. I have a life there, I said. People who need me. He looked at me, his eyes hard but softening at the edges. Take care of yourself, Ethan, he said, and it was the closest thing to acceptance I'd ever gotten from him. I hugged Claire goodbye, promising to call, and boarded the plane back to San Francisco. Lucas was at the airport again, his sign a familiar beacon. I ran to him, throwing my arms around him, not caring who saw. I'm back, I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. He laughed, holding me tight. You're home, he said, and this time I believed it. Back at Haven House, life settled into a new rhythm. Lucas and I were official now, our relationship a quiet but steady flame. We'd cook dinner together, steal kisses in the hallway, plan for a future that felt possible. I got a promotion at Brood Awakening, enough to start looking for an apartment of my own. Mara helped me find a studio in the Mission, small but mine. The day I moved in, Lucas helped me carry boxes, his laughter filling the empty space. But the past wasn't done with me. A month later, Claire called with news. My mother had passed. The grief was sharp, unexpected, but tempered by the memory of our last conversation. I'd had a chance to say what mattered, to hear her apology. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Lucas held me as I cried, his arms a safe harbor. You gave her something real, he said. That's more than most people get. Haven House threw a memorial event, not just for my mother but for all the families we'd lost, biological or chosen. Aisha read a poem, Jay baked a cake, and Lucas hung a banner that read "Love Persists." I spoke about my mother, about the love we'd found in our final moments, and the room listened, their silence a kind of love. I realized then that home wasn't just a place. It was the people who saw you, who held you, who fought for you. Lucas and I grew closer, our love a quiet rebellion against the world's cruelty. We'd walk through the Castro, hand in hand, unafraid. I started writing again, short stories about people like us. Flawed, fierce, finding their way. Lucas read them, his feedback gentle but honest. You've got a voice, Ethan, he said. Use it. And I did, submitting my work to local magazines, dreaming of a day when my stories might help someone else feel less alone. A year after I'd arrived in San Francisco, I stood outside Haven House, watching new faces arrive. Scared, hopeful, just like I'd been. Lucas was beside me, his hand in mine, his sign now a permanent fixture. Newcomers welcome, safe rides home. We'd made it through budget crises, personal losses, and the messy beauty of building a life together. I wasn't the kid who'd cried alone at the airport gate anymore. I was someone new, someone whole. One evening, Lucas took me to the mural we'd seen months ago, the one with two men holding hands. Someone had added to it, a cardboard sign painted into the scene, with the words "Love Wins" in bold black letters. I laughed, recognizing Lucas's handiwork. You did this? I said, nudging him. He shrugged, his smile shy. Thought it needed a little something, he said. I kissed him there, under the streetlights, the city alive around us. My stories were starting to get published, small presses at first, but it was a start. I wrote about Haven House, about the people who'd become my family, about the boy from Nebraska who'd found his way. Lucas was my first reader, his pride a quiet fire that kept me going. We talked about the future, maybe a bigger apartment, maybe a dog, maybe a life that didn't just survive but thrived. One night, as we sat on our roof, the city glittering below, I told Lucas about the day I'd arrived in San Francisco. I was so scared, I said. I thought I'd made a mistake. But then you were there with that sign, and everything changed. He squeezed my hand, his eyes soft. You changed it, Ethan, he said. You chose to keep going. I just gave you a ride. But it was more than a ride. Lucas had given me a home, not just a place but a feeling, a certainty that I was enough just as I was. I thought of my mother, of the apology we'd shared, of the family I'd found in Haven House. I thought of the boy I'd been, hiding in Nebraska, and the man I was becoming, unafraid to love, to live, to fight for my place in the world. The city stretched out before us, a tapestry of light and possibility. I leaned against Lucas, his warmth a promise. We'd face whatever came next, together, and that was enough, more than enough. I cried alone standing outside the airport gate, but the man with the sign took me safely home that day. And every day since, I've been finding my way back to that home, to the love that persists, to the life I never dared to dream I could have.